We're almost 2 months into the pandemic crisis, and I thought it would make sense to do another video on the insurance implications many business owners are asking about. Specifically, is business interruption covered? And if it's not, why isn't it? My objective here is to be informative, talking straight without a lot of noise so we understand this realistically. I have extreme empathy for all business owners going through this crisis, so here are my insights. First, it's important to state that all business insurance policies are different. What I'll speak about here are broad brushstrokes and what is considered the norm. But it's really important to read your policies. If you need help, ask your broker, or of course, you can always contact me. Let's go back to the basics of how business income or business interruption insurance works. There are 3 basic issues that most policies say must occur for a business interruption claim to be covered. The first is there must be direct physical damage to your premises described in the policy. The physical damage must be caused by a covered peril. And third, the damage must cause you to fully or partially shut down and you suffer a loss of income. There's another coverage part in most policies called civil authority. Under this coverage part, your insurance will cover your business income loss if it's shut down by a civil authority such as a mayor of your city and ingress and egress is prevented because 1, another business within a certain distanced area, typically 1 mile, has suffered a physical damage to their premises caused by a covered peril, and 2, to safeguard the public, it's necessary to prevent the public ingress and egress from that area. Lastly, coverage typically lasts for about 2 weeks depending on the policy form. On top of the physical damage requirements, many property policies also contain exclusions for viruses and bacteria. So the first question I'm often asked is, why are viruses excluded from property insurance? The answer is that the insurance industry has been watching the potential impacts of pandemics for decades, and they chose to specifically exclude it from many policy forms for a very clear reason. Insurers have finite balance sheets, so they must cover risks which have boundaries in both geography and time. Let's take as an example, if a hurricane hits the coast of New Jersey, the event is going to be catastrophic. It's going to destroy property, take lives, and disrupt that region. But it wouldn't necessarily be catastrophic for most insurers because they have built that risk into their balance sheets and charged appropriately for its potential impact. Also, that hurricane is bound to a certain geographic region and its impact of time is limited. It's only going to last for a certain period of time. A pandemic, on the other hand, is very different. As we're seeing, it hits not just a community, state, region, or country. It has the potential to impact entire countries and, in this case, the entire world. The potential risk is so large that insurers cannot charge an appropriate premium for it, and if they did, most businesses couldn't afford to purchase that coverage. As I mentioned earlier, insurers have finite balance sheets, and pandemic risk has a rather infinite reach in both geography and time. Who knows when this is going to be over? The only entity in the United States with an unlimited balance sheet is the federal government, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, to wrap some perspective around this, let me introduce the second most common question I get. Is it true that the states and maybe the federal government will force insurance companies to pay my business interruption claim? Yes, it is true that legislation has been introduced in several states that would require insurance companies to pay business interruption claims. What I find interesting is that most of these legislative bills are very similar in their wording to each other, so to me it seems like a politically motivated pile-on, rather than a well-reasoned response to this disaster. Remember I mentioned above the finite balance sheets? Here's some numbers to consider when it comes to forcing insurance companies to cover this. An insurance trade group has estimated that the monthly business interruption claims potential just from small businesses could be as high as $431 billion, again, per month. Here's some context to wrap around that. It's important to understand that the total surplus of all insurance companies in the U.S. is around $800 billion. Policyholder surplus is the fund from which insurers pay their claims. It's their capital base. So that means paying just 2 months of business interruption claims just for small businesses could bankrupt the insurance industry. It also means that all other claims that are covered would go unpaid. Your house burns down? Sorry, can't pay that claim. Get injured in an auto accident? Sorry, can't pay that claim either. Your factory burns to the ground, workers get injured, you're sued for a product liability claim or an employment practice liability claim or a cyber hack? Yep, those claims aren't going to get paid either. This is a problem that a lot of lawmakers aren't thinking about. I'll leave the legality of forcing insurers to amend their contracts to provide coverage to the lawyers, but most experts are saying that the move is plainly unconstitutional. The third question I often get is, There's a lot of news about restaurateurs and other businesses suing their insurers for business interruption coverage. Is this something I should consider? Yes, there's a lot of litigation and there's tons more to come over this. I'm not going to comment on whether these suits will go anywhere or not, but only say that in most instances it's likely going to cost a fair sum of money to litigate these cases, so you'll need to carefully evaluate whether this is a path you want to take. My read on the issue is that most insurers who have firm footing and are confident in their policy forms and exclusions will not back down, so litigation will take time. And time means money, probably lots of money, with an unknown result at the end of the journey. My advice is that you read your policy, again, and speak with a knowledgeable practitioner in this area. Just don't jump on the bandwagon. So what's the solution retrospectively and moving forward? Looking backwards, my opinion is that the only response can be a government response. I hate to even say that because I understand the long-term implications of that and its impact to the deficit and the overall health of this country's economy. The payroll protection program, of course, is a step in the right direction, but so far it's been a big disappointment for a lot of business owners, so it's difficult to imagine how the government can sustain any kind of assistance program for any length of time. Moving forward, though, I think this is a risk we've got to deal with. COVID and its potential variations could be dogging us for quite a while into the future. So how do we insure against this kind of a risk? Because the potential for loss is so catastrophic, I think, and many in the insurance community do as well, that we need to establish a federal backstop to pandemic risk like we did for terrorism risk following 9/11. The Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, or TRIA, T-R-I-A, is a good model to follow, and some have dubbed a new model as the PRIA, or Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. Pricing for coverage would be a bit tricky, but I think we'll see it added as an option to most business policies. To make it work, it'll need to be relatively affordable for businesses to actually purchase it, so pricing may be subsidized a bit to get it going. If losses occur in the future, insurers will be responsible for some part of it, then the federal reinsurance program will step in to cover the rest of the risk, similar to TRIA. Business owners would probably have some skin in the game as well in the form of higher deductibles and coverage caps. The bottom line is that I think it's important to set realistic expectations for everyone, now and into the future. These business interruption claims are not going to be settled easily, if at all. But I will stay on top of the progress in this area and communicate it if I see a shift in the landscape. Until then, if I can provide answers, help you better understand your coverage, and assist with reading your policy forms, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and contact me. Stay healthy, try to stay positive. Like you, I'm hoping we're through the worst of this and start to see a return to some normalcy soon.